Hey, this is Mark Schoenbeck. Excited to be here on Kestra Out Loud with a fantastic group of advisors and panelists. We have an exciting topic to cover today. This is all about the future leaders in our industry and the process of the transition of responsibilities and clients and the running of our firms. We have some great insights to share, and we're excited to get into it. So I will ask my esteemed colleagues here to go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your firm, where you're from. Why don't you start us off, Liz?
Okay. Well, I'm Liz Hand. We have Pleasant Wealth, which is located in Canton, Ohio. And we're a firm that manages about $150 million of assets. We've got a team of 2 advisors and 2.5 service team members, as well as an outside advisor that affiliates with our firm. We recently just had our founder retire, and so that's been a shift for the company. We serve women, and I don't know, what else was I supposed to share?
That's good.
Okay.
It works. Carrie, you want to go next?
Yes, I'm Carrie Jackson from Memphis, Tennessee. I am with Fish & Associates. We are an all-female financial planning firm. We specifically cater to women and LGBT clients. We do also have a fairly large young professionals program, and our staff is 2 advisors, including our founder and myself, and then we also have 2.5 support people.
Awesome. Yanni.
Yanni Niebuhr of BFG Financial Advisors out of Baltimore, the Chief Investment Officer and Lead Advisor of the firm. We have 20 staff total, 10 advisors, and work with about 700 clients.
Awesome. And all equity owners in the business at some level, and
Yes.
all running an Ensemble firm.
Correct.
Clients are clients of the firm. And
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So look, as G2s yourself in some form or fashion here, you get a lot of questions, and there's a lot that goes into this conversation of transition and next generation leadership. A lot of conversations around deal structure and the transfer of equity and how you go about funding that. There's a lot of conversations around dealing with founders and all of the fun that goes with them releasing control and kind of moving on. But there's also a lot of conversation around the actual client transition and how do you take a client who has been working with a founder for maybe 20 years and transition that relationship to the next generation of leadership. And so I think for today, in the context of this podcast, we're really going to try to hone in on that piece of the conversation and try to go a little bit deep on that. So why don't we start off with maybe using this as an opportunity to share a little bit more too about how you are in the firm or how you got to where you are in the firm. And Liz, we'll start with you again.
Sure.
And do you want to share a little bit about how Pleasant Wealth has transitioned clients from one advisor to the next and what's gone into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the process of my career, I've transitioned from 2 different advisors. We purchased a practice in 2014. So I'd been in the practice about 4 years. And that advisor was retiring, pretty in the weeds. And so with that relationship, I stepped in right away, sat in on all the meetings, and then took a pretty active role in the conversation, but I just asserted that. Just in the way that he liked to do his business, he was a little more reserved. And so for someone that's a little bit more outgoing, it was a natural fit between the 2 of us. We did joint meetings for the 2 years that he stayed on with our firm. And then in his final half year, I took the meetings solo. Clients knew right away, as soon as I was coming onto the picture, as soon as they sold to Pleasant Wealth, that something was happening, and it was immediate, like, is Jack retiring? And so we wrote a whole letter out to them saying, like, no, Jack's not retiring. Frequently asked questions, is Jack retiring? No, he's not retiring. And then you'd still answer that question over and over and over and over. So, yeah, I think the transition of a client relationship, naturally, the clients are going to be a little bit on edge with it because most people in the world don't like change. Some of us
Fair.
do.
Shocker.
That's very fair.
So any way that you can be with them along the process is helpful.
Okay, awesome. Carrie, want to go next?
Yes, so our transition was a little bit different. We basically went from Our founder is also my mother. So we went from essentially a sole practitioner to a small ensemble firm. So I came into the firm as a client service associate, got certified, license, et cetera. And then as I was training my replacement on the service side, I started sitting in on meetings with Kathy about 3 or 4 years into being there. So I'm 15 years in now. So when we did start to have the conversations about succession planning, we didn't face a lot of pushback. People pretty much knew that I had been around. They had seen me grow, get the experience, and they knew that we were taking a team approach. We reiterated that pretty frequently. And also, just in our personal experience, I think there was a lot of relief because people had been working just with Kathy, so there was a concern, what if she dies prematurely? Who takes care of us? Who will take over that relationship? So we did not experience a lot of resistance. And from that time on, we have continued to really push the narrative that we are an ensemble practice. It's not Kathy's clients versus Carrie's clients. We may take point in a certain meeting or helping a client with a certain request or a problem to solve, but we always collaborate behind the scenes, and people know that they can come to either one of us, regardless of the age or the type of client. So for us, it's been a pretty smooth transition so far. And again, we've had our paraplanner come in and sit in on meetings pretty much since she started. And now that she's been there a year, I'm trying to talk to her a little bit more in meetings, get her to participate a little bit, just so that our existing clients will get comfortable with her as well, anytime Kathy or I, aren't available or in on a meeting.
That's pretty important, and something that we do too as an ensemble is insisting that clients understand that, yes, while I'm in the meeting leading, or Eric or Lena or whoever, you're a client of the firm. And if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, you're going to miss my smiling face, but there are 9 other people there that know your plan, know you, know your family, that are going to jump right in.
Exactly.
And it makes it for easier transitions that we have.
Yeah.
I think that does require, though, the client education, because a lot of the firms, and mine included, came from the advisor-centric model where it was you had the star and you had the support team around them, and the clients would not interact with anybody else except for the advisor. Like in those first couple of meetings with that one his name was Jack, when I was succeeding Jack, there was a client, and I'll never forget it. She stuck her hand up in front of my face and was like, "Who is this, Jack? Why is she in here?"
No.
And I'm like a young 20-something. I'm like, oh, I don't know what's happening. But,
How's the relationship with her now?
She did not continue on with our firm long
There you
term.
go. Okay.
Was that your choice? Or?
There was one, a story for another day. But I one time told her
Wish
that
her well.
our firm is no longer serving your needs.
Yeah.
Did you
And
do
she
it with
said-
your hand up? It got to have been like, you're out.
No, I did not. But so with that, all clients have a different, where were we going with that piece before I went into the story?
I don't know. I'm stuck on the
Client transitions.
Client transitions and
I forgot.
comfortability with the next generation or the next.
Yeah.
All right. So Yanni, we kind of jumped past you there
I mean,
a
I
little
started
bit.
that.
So
It's my
you
fault.
it's like I'm used to it.
Yeah.
You come from a larger firm with more lead advisors, and you're already working on G3 and G4. So
And I forgot about G5 in the last talk. So there you go.
right. There you go.
Now, when I started, there were 4 of us. And so the idea was we were truly building out that 5-year plan for an advisor to start out and saying, okay, how do we progress to the point where the founder, the G1, can start to take a step back from advising and more managing the company? And so it was year 1, you're in the meeting, you're kind of just sitting there and soaking it all in. Year 2, you're taking notes, maybe doing a little bit of wrap up. Year 3, you're actually participating in the meeting itself. Year 4, you're running the meeting and handling throughout the year all client communications, copying the G1 on so that the client still knows they're still in the background. And by year 5, there's also been a conversation of some way, shape, or form with them saying, as the G1, look, I'm taking a step towards management responsibilities, cutting back and scaling back on the advising side. And they're completely comfortable with that G2 at that point. It's okay, I'll miss you, but I'm good.
Yeah.
And we've seen almost no pushback. There's always a handful, and it takes a little bit longer, or there's got to be an extra discussion, but we haven't had any attrition from it.
Yeah. So that clarity of timeline and process to me, I think, is super powerful and a really great best practice for other people that are going through that, right? I think, and tell me if I'm wrong or right here, like it sets clear expectations. It gives a great glide path to understanding what you need to be doing to get there.
Mhm.
You shared with me previously. I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit around why it's so important for all of you to make sure that that first year that somebody is there, that they're taking more of that operational role and not immediately jumping into a client meeting.
So for me, that's where I started. Was the first year there at the firm was all operations. It was account openings, it was transfers, it was beneficiaries. It was everything that was processing pretty much with Kestra and doing those things. And the reason why I particularly find that important is eventually you're going to be that first chair in a meeting. And after that meeting, you're doing the wrap up and you're giving instructions to then your operations team. And if you don't know how the order of operations works, it creates confusion. Now, granted, the things that I knew back in operations 14 years ago are wildly wrong now, and they're correcting me on things. But I at least know the basis of it to give some instruction until they tell me, no, you meant X instead of Y. But that's a different discussion.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to pull one thread that I heard from each of you, but want to be more direct about it. From when you came into the firm to when you first started sitting in on client meetings, what was that like for you? I heard Carrie say it was 3-4 years of doing work before you got there. Your process is kind of after a year of that for somebody who's on that path. What was your experience?
So I started in on the client services, and the intention was in year one, after year one, I would be stepping into an advisor role. However, there was no plan that was put in place for that. And so it was pretty tricky, actually, as just a young person, young professional coming in, family business, Midwestern mindset of like, keep the waters calm, be a good girl, but deeply frustrated with the work, and knowing I was supposed to be somewhere else but didn't know how to get there. And I had a business coach at the time, and she said, if the map is not made for you, assert, ask, which of the next meetings can I sit in? When you're doing that weekly prep meeting where you're going through all of the different clients that you're going to meet in the following week, say, can I sit in on XYZ, and be really specific. That was one of the best pieces of advice at that time for me. But that was just me shadowing. And then eventually we purchased the practice. So it was probably, by the time, succinctly, 3 years.
Okay, cool.
But then shadowing a little bit in that second year.
So something that we haven't talked about, but I would love to kind of hear from each of you, right? We're all human. We all have a certain amount of self-doubt as we're especially earlier on in our career. Any fears, apprehensions, any self-doubt you all experienced in the early days of those first couple opportunities to be sitting in the first chair or even playing more of a lead role in those meetings? And what was that like, and how'd you overcome it?
I did a lot of role playing and practicing the meeting. So mine was a little bit more unique. We had a shareholder leave. And so it was kind of a shift of working with Eric to taking on a whole new book. And when we announced this was happening, I still remember this, where we had a client email back and said, well, that stinks. Well, I guess I need to come and decide if I'm staying or not. And that was literally the email. And it was a large client. And I was rather nervous. They're a C-suite at a publicly traded company. And here I am in my mid-20s trying to figure this out. And I probably rehearsed that with my wife for 4 hours the night before, going through it, nervous as all get out, but the meeting went great, and now we're the best of friends, and it was wonderful, but it was stressful in the beginning.
Yeah, I had a similar experiences. I'm sure we all have. Mine was kind of twofold because, as I mentioned, my founder is also my mom, and I didn't want people to think that I was just in that seat because of my mom. I wanted to prove I passed the same tests, I passed the same licenses, I went to the same benchmarks. And I think for a lot of years, I really maybe overcorrected in the sense that I worked as many hours as I could possibly put in just to prove that, I was smart enough and good enough to be in that seat.
Yeah.
And to the point where I kind of burned out myself a little bit. But I just, I've always really put a big premium on my intelligence and my achievements. And it was always separate from my mom until I got into that business. And I just really wanted people to know that I was up for earning my right to be there, and I wasn't just going to be handed it. And we really didn't have, again, a whole lot of pushback from clients, but I do remember one kind of painful experience where I had met with a client whose sister was also a client. And so this is a client we'd known for a long time, and Kathy was going to be out of town, and I was an advisor by this point, so she let me lead the meeting, and I just did it alone, and she wasn't there.
Right.
And then her sister called in, and these are women in their 70s, but her sister called in and just made a big stink. Like, I heard my sister met with Carrie, and I want to make sure Kathy's going to be there for the meeting. And it did take a big
rattle you a little.
chunk out of my confidence, because I knew I had handled that meeting very well. And, I still have a great relationship with both those sisters. Now they both have my cell phone. They can't get enough of me. So, they call me and text me, and they, if they need help. But it just shows, if you stick around and put in the work, people will trust you and understand that you're just as qualified to be there. But those little pain points, they hurt early on.
Growing opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me, permission to talk about really difficult things for females.
Yes.
Okay.
Fire away.
So our primary client base, Amish Mennonite, very patriarchal in nature. And so my first couple of years was a lot of, okay, Liz, let Ellis give me a call after we're done having like a whole conversation, financial planning oriented. It was very defeating from the perspective of like, I don't even think I'm making any traction with these people. They don't really, these people. I mean, they're my community. But I think having that nature of father-daughter dynamic, it was very disempowering for me. No, I'm not trying to say anything about anybody in this situation. It just was.
Yeah.
And I found it was so fascinating to me. As soon as we had purchased that other practice, my confidence level like shot through the roof. And in taking StrengthsFinder, winning others over is like one of my top strengths. And so I didn't doubt myself that these clients were going to stay, which is fascinating to me because in the other setting, I was very unsure of who I was and always took the back seat. So I do think there are dynamics, especially for women, if you are not being taken seriously as a female professional, it's tricky and it's hard to navigate. It's infuriating at times. But continuing to find the places where you are getting traction really does help the confidence level boost.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I know two of you have now been on both sides of this equation, right? As your firms have both grown, you have brought on relationships away from a founder and now are transitioning relationships to somebody else. So I feel like that's a very unique perspective that not many people have had, especially where you sit right now. So I'm kind of curious. I'm going to ask the two of you a question. Having been on both sides and having at one time been probably frustrated with the founder who might be slow to give up a relationship, and now being in a spot where you're going through your own struggle of giving up a relationship, like what have been some of the key learnings, lessons? And if you were going to give a founder who's really struggling with letting a client go advice, what might that be?
I guess I'm going first.
Yeah, he's looking at you. Go ahead.
So what I've noticed being on the transitioning side where I'm handing clients off, I have a lot of confidence in the person who I'm handing the relationship to. I think that's really pivotal because that shows in the languaging that you're giving to clients, your excitement level, et cetera. I did notice when we were starting to do this at the beginning of last year, there was a little bit of momentum with it, a little bit of fear, trepidation. But like once you get into the conversations and people are like, oh, this will be great. We'll have Clinton for this purpose and Liz for this purpose. It then started to take a dip. It was like I was leaving the shore. If you can picture yourself in a canoe, I was leaving shore and paddling towards something new, but I didn't know where I was going. And the shoreline was getting further and further away. And I found what happened for me is that I was just very anxious about what that meant for me on the team, what that meant for me in light of the client's eyes. Like, did I even have value in and logic brain is like, of course you have value, Liz. But the emotional side of it is that you're completely letting go of control of how people react. And so when I think about what I would suggest to founders in that process of letting go is to really have some sort of third party there that not in the room, but like separate that you can process through all of this, because it is a tricky transition to say, to take your hat and change hats, change roles, and redefine who you are, because there is a period of time where it's like a blank canvas. And that feels very unsettling when you've been the one that's controlled building the practice, brought in all the clients, set up the initial business model, found the successor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, awesome. Donnie, what's your experience?
So to piggyback what you said, Liz, is being careful having too much confidence in the other advisors. So they're technically sound. They have great rapport with all the clients they work with, but then forgetting that the client is a relationship that you have a personal connection with, and not being a part of that transition where the G1 or even my case isn't in that transition where the new one is in there and they're wondering, well, where's Liz? Where's Yanni? Where's Carrie in the meeting? And it's surprise, I'm your new person. Because that's a tough one to turn around with. So you have to make sure as the G1 or the G2, whoever's transitioning, that you were part of that all the way through. Because while you're next up in line, it can be fully capable of it. You have to remember it is a personal connection that you have with them. And if not done properly, they will leave even if you have a fantastic rapport with you, but not the new person.
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about that. And maybe with being in a family business and it's father to daughter, sister to brother, maybe I over-index on that, like the family relationship with the client is there, and
they have a connection because of the family.
Yeah, perhaps that's an extra edge of a family business versus a non, but I could see that for sure.
So what's your experience like hearing that? Because similar thought there, like what's your experience been around average length of time for that transition and handoff? I mean, everybody's different. Some probably go quicker, but like, what would you say is an average length of time in that kind of transition from one to the
best answer there? It depends. It comes. I know it comes down to the advisor and their relationship with that client. For some of our more experienced advisors, they can come in and within one meeting, the client doesn't even remember that I'm in the room anymore, and it's fine. Some of our younger advisors, it's going to take a 3 or 4 year path for that. So it honestly, it depends on who your G2, G3 is and where they're at in their career, because some people they've been communicating with just by happenstance because of their career with the firm and that the client's completely comfortable with it. I can't tell you how many times that people I have not been in a meeting because of one thing or another and they don't even remember I'm still part of the relationship.
So I had a thought, and words matter, language matters, and we're doing a lot of talking about transitions and handing off, and it feels like we're passing around baseball cards or something, right? Where all of you are running an ensemble firm. All of you are being deliberate up front with your clients around you're a client of the firm. We are a team. Do any of you delineate with a client kind of the behind the scenes nuance we all talk about? Like, I'm your lead advisor and this is your associate advisor, or do you just bring everybody in the room and everybody's there? And does anybody go deep on that?
We simply say to clients, you are a client of the firm. I'm the face, the smiling person here that's giving you the advice. But what makes us unique is we have all 10 advisors once a week sitting down and looking at the next 2 to 3 weeks worth of meetings. So you've had 10 sets of eyeballs going through your plan. And so the advice has come from 10 different people. I'm just the one delivering it. So that if, God forbid, I get hit by the bus, you're going to miss me, but there are other people that know everything about your family and your plan.
Yeah, we really do the same things, just it's 2 instead of 10. So, well, actually 3, because I meet with our paraplanner separately because Kathy doesn't really get as involved in our young professionals program, and we have a paraplanner who her preferred career path is to take over our young professionals program. So I've really tailored our training with her to that, and we meet once a month and prepare. And so we're setting those people up to be familiar with her from the beginning. But we do tell people, we regardless of whether it's a young professional or a more, traditional older clientele, when we bring people into our firm, if they don't go through a financial plan first, we typically don't take them on. So we tell them in the very first meeting who everyone on the staff is. We give out a welcome packet to new clients, that has like a little picture with like a picture of everybody's little head, and call me for a beneficiary change, call me for an investment question, things like that. So just so that people know that, who they should maybe direct more specific questions to. But again, the constant repeated message is that you are a Fish and Associates client, and that, whenever you call, we're going to help you, whatever the question is.
Awesome.
And I would say that for our firm, we're newer into the Ensemble space. It's really been the last year. So the messaging hasn't been as repeated for our clients. And that place of telling what the different roles has just added confusion. So I would leave it off the table and just remind them we've got a dedicated client inbox. You can email at any time and any of us will answer. Because sometimes you get in that question of, I don't want to bother you with this. So I didn't know who to send it to. And then it's just like jumbled.
I was going to ask, does
information
that
back and forth.
actually work? Because we tried that, and clients were like, no, I'm just going to email you, and you can get it to wherever you need to go.
Guys, people are going to do whatever they want. So I would
That's
say
humanity.
No, I wouldn't say that it's 100% successful by any means. It's more for us just about delivering that message. It's
Sure.
not like we actually really anticipate everyone's just going to follow that. And we don't mind if somebody asks me something that really needs to be handled by client service, and I just loop in client service and say, hey, Victoria's going to take care of this. Mahogany's going to handle that. And they don't have a problem. And a lot of, we serve a lot of people who are also business owners, parents. They're busy too. And they're not, if they have our email at the top of the list, they're just going to fire it off because they know we're going to take care of them, whoever's inbox it ends up in.
But this all sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been a fantastic conversation. To wrap us up, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, if there was a pearl of advice you could give to somebody in the process, founder, G1, G2, G3, if there's a nugget of advice that you would share about a client transition, what would it be?
Just have a plan in place and stick with it. It's important for the person that is inheriting that client to know what they're expected to do and how long it's expected to take, because if you kind of just go at it haphazardly, you could take too long and your advisor gets frustrated. The client could be questioning what's going on. And so having that plan in place is incredibly important.
Love that.
Yeah, I would say just communicate consistently. Telling people once is usually not enough. So I would say just, keep reiterating what the plan is so that people are hearing it repeatedly and often, and just, like Yanni said, stick to it.
Love it.
I was going to say, be you, boo. Because I think a lot of times when you're stepping in as G2 to G1, you feel like you have to emulate the personality or the way of relating that G1 has. And that's not the truth. You're inauthentic in that engagement. And if you're really, this whole business is about trust. And so trust yourself, trust that you are enough in your natural personality, whether it's introverted or extroverted, whether it's more into the numbers or more into the, relational side of it, that you have something to bring to the table. Own it. Also work on other areas, of course, always be learning, but the more authentically you're showing up, that trust factor seals.
Oh God, that could lead to a whole separate podcast in and of itself. I think the
Profound.
like the thought of you being who you are and being comfortable that will by definition be different than the founder, whoever that is really, really powerful. So, well, this has been a lot of fun, great insights, great wisdom. I appreciate all of your time and your willingness to share with us. Thanks again. Encourage you to check out other Kestra Out Loud podcasts. Thanks for the time, everyone.